Hello and welcome to today's iteration of the OkayCon 2020 Virtual Summit. I am really excited because I'm here today with Andy Murphy. He is an expert in home and family security. And I'm actually going to read a little bit from Andy's book, The Secure Dad, because I like what Andy, I like what you have to say about how you came to be an expert, basically.
Oh, thank you.
So you write, you know what, before I read that, I will just say, welcome.
Oh,
It's
well,
good to
thank
have
you.
you here.
Thank you for having me here, Karen. I'm excited to be here. I woke up excited this morning to talk to you today.
Cool. The way I usually start a conversation on my show, which isn't a video, is I don't even identify who the guest is, right, until I've read their intro and everything like that. And
Right.
this is a little bit different, so forgive me as I, jump into this. Okay. So you write, I started The Secure Dad because I have a genuine desire to give families the information they can use to become safer. I'm not an expert in the field of security or situational awareness, pardon me, nor am I a member of the law enforcement community or military. But as I've demonstrated with more than 100 articles on thesecuredad.com, I'm a man who woke up to the basic human fact that my safety and my family's safety is my responsibility. Some may question how I can tell anyone about security because I'm just a dad. But that is the problem that plagues our society. Police officer and author Robert J. Desario says it
Mhm.
this way in his book, Protect Yourself. We have become dependent on technology and government to protect us, almost relinquishing control to others. We need to take ownership of our own safety. Desario is right, and that's just what I've done. Andy continues, I've made personal and family safety the study of my life. I've read many fascinating books, listened to my intuition, and talked with law enforcement personnel, taken multiple self-defense classes and attended security seminars, and practiced what I have preached since 1999. And you referenced 1999 specifically because that was
Right.
when the shootings happened in Columbine,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
And I just think it's really important to kind of emphasize that idea. We, the parents, are the most important line of defense for our children and for our
Yes,
families, right?
we are.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Now, I was going to say, a lot of people, they talk about wanting to be able to protect their kids and they would do anything for their kids. But, I know parents who would die for their children. I mean, we all feel that way, but there's so much we can do in between the desire to help our kids and actually dying to
I
protect
know.
our kids. There's so much stuff in between that we can do to make sure it never comes to that. And so that's why I wanted to start the Secure Dad, to let parents know that there's so many options out there for ways that we can make our kids safe at home and in public, online, and so many things that we can do to prevent bad things from happening.
Yeah, and I'm excited to get into really. I want to start with our homes. Particularly everybody's at home right now. We're recording this in the sort of I would say the
Yeah,
second week that this is really kind of hitting home
right.
in the United States. This has really become a big deal. So everybody's entering kind of their second week of like school at home and trying to balance working and
Yeah.
Andy, you yourself were saying your wife is an essential employee, which means that there's a lot
Yep.
more of home care that is falling on you right now, probably than usual, right?
Yes, there is. I just helped my son do a 3-page narrative on what it was like adopting our dog, and it was a labor of love. I say that through, gritted teeth here. So,
Yeah, I'm sure. So, I do like to try. I'm trying to sort of check in with everybody at the beginning of our conversations, just to find out like how is it in your neck of the woods? How are you and your family doing? And is there a positive that you have seen or that you can share? Something going on that's good right now?
yeah, absolutely. It was funny. Last night, we went out after dinner and we ate ice cream sandwiches on our front porch. And I don't think if this had happened, we would have ever done that. We saw a couple of our neighbors and waved to them. I've spoken to my neighbors from well across the street more in the past 2 weeks than I have at any other point. So I do think there's like a sense of community that is happening because we're all going through this struggle together, and this is something that is uniting us. And it's special to see that we all realize all the problems that I had 3 weeks ago. I don't even think I remember what they are anymore because there's a new priority and there's something else going on, and it's a common struggle that we're all sharing. And it's really good to be able to see my neighbors and make sure they're okay because I genuinely do care about them. I want them to be okay. So just last night, sitting out on the porch, eating ice cream sandwiches, waving at people, um, it was just, that was special. I don't think it would have happened if the circumstances weren't this way.
Yeah, yeah. We actually went, I mean, something similar. We have across the street neighbors that we adore. And I would say for the better part of a year, maybe more, we've been like, oh, we got to get together. We got to get together. Yesterday or day before yesterday, we went for a walk together. We kept our distance. I
Sure,
mean, they
very
were sort
good.
of on one side of the street and we were on the other, but we were all walking together. The kids were on scooters. It was so nice. And
Hmm.
again, I don't think it would have happened had we not been in this situation. So,
Right.
there are I heard today I heard the idea. In fact, we were talking about this. I was talking about this in that YouTube video that I made earlier this morning. Pat Flynn asking the question, what is possible because of this? What does this make possible? And I think that can be answered in a frightening way. We can worry about that. But if
Right.
we're trying to stay positive, in fact, today I'm going to show this again. I did show this earlier in that video, but my inspirational calendar says, think about what could go right. And combining that with the idea of what is possible, I mean, you get things like wonderful memories of sitting on the front porch eating ice cream sandwiches together. That's
Hmm.
a special
Hmm.
thing. So, the other part of this that I wanted to read, and this is just a few sentences of your book, The Secure Dad. And by the way, I should say, where are my manners? Andy's website is thesecuredad.com. And I hope we'll get to the chance to talk a little bit later about some resources that Andy has put together for us at his website. But for right now, I just want to. When I started reading this book, there was a real revelation to me. Something that I think maybe like I had the wrong mindset about, which is you write. I think all of us as parents need to realize that just by thinking about how to save your family from a house fire doesn't mean that we're going to set the house ablaze. It's not morbid to think about what to do when you smell smoke. It's careless not to think about a fire escape plan until you're on fire. We can't protect our families effectively if we're not prepared. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit more about that idea.
Sure. Yeah. There are, especially right now, like we've already kind of alluded to this, there's so many negative things that we can think about and things that can just consume us. And when I started the Secure Dad, I was like, yeah, there's a lot of serious stuff that we can do and that we can talk about. But I'm like, I'm not that serious hardcore all the time. I'm a goofy dad as well. So I wanted to be able to like bring the readers in to understand that, yeah, we're going to talk about some scary stuff, but when we talk about it, that's when we can grow and we can mature and we can become protectors that way. So when, just because you think about, the example of the house fire, what are you going to do if your house catches on fire? Well, that doesn't mean that your mindset, your thought process is going to set the house on fire. What you really need to be doing is, you address what's uncomfortable about that, and then you reverse engineer it until you are no longer afraid of that problem.
Yeah.
So you say, okay, I'm afraid my house is going to catch on fire. So let's make sure that outlet that sparks in the bathroom gets fixed. Let's make sure that we have fire extinguishers upstairs and downstairs and in the garage. Let's go ahead and get those escape ladders that we can throw out from the second floor of our home. And let's teach our children what to do if they smell smoke or if they hear the smoke alarm going off. Let's make a plan on how we're going to get out and where we're going to meet once we do get out. And then after you address that, the problem doesn't seem so insurmountable anymore. It's a process that you have now, and it's not as scary as it once was.
Yeah, and I think through that it gives the kids a chance to ask questions and to practice things. And if I could, I'd love to share a story from when my kids were young.
Hmm.
Our One of our kids used to sleep like 3 feet from the ceiling. Basically, his loft was
Hmm.
pretty high up. It was awesome. He loved it. The only
Okay.
problem was the smoke detector in his room was about 5 feet from his head,
Hmm.
and we have smoke detectors, as most people do now. Ours are sort of hardwired and they're battery
Hmm.
backup. And every 6 or 8 months or so, one of the batteries gets just low enough that it sets off the whole thing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so this was like a killer when the children were young. And one time they went off, and our son couldn't get out of bed because he was covering his ears and he couldn't get down the ladder.
Hmm.
And I can remember just being so overcome with this, oh my gosh, what if it was a real fire? And so what we did about that was we already had a sort of plan. We had a safe place for everybody to meet. We have this area in our yard called the Secret Fort. At least we did then. And
Hmm.
so we would all go to the Secret Fort. That was where we would meet. But if you couldn't get out of bed to get there, huge problem.
Right.
So what we did about it was we deliberately set off the smoke detectors while the kids were standing outside the house. They were outside the front door. And what they were meant to do was go, oh my gosh, it's a smoke detector, and like run to the Secret Fort. And we did that. And then 5 minutes later, we brought them back, and now they stood just inside the door. And we set it all off again, and they did it all again. And then they came to the top of the stairs, so now they're in the upstairs portion of our home. Smoke detector goes off. We all run to the Secret Fort. And then they're in their bedrooms, and again. And then Max is on his ladder, and again. And then he's in his bed. And so finally he got to the point where he was like, okay, I can get down the ladder, even though I'm hearing this. And it felt so good to know with certainty that our kid could get somewhere safe, if he needed to.
Absolutely, and I love that story. I love that you actually set the smoke detector off so that they could hear what it was like and then be able to respond to it. Because I've discovered over the past few years that kids, little kids especially, don't necessarily wake up in the middle of the night for smoke detectors because they don't know what the sound is and their brain hasn't associated it with an emergency. So
Mm.
they sleep through it, which is scary to think about. So yeah, that's awesome that you were able to set it off so many times and have them run out. That's very good, very proactive.
And it's sparking another memory for me too of just what you were just saying. I was in my previous life before I contracted my tendon disorder and sort of couldn't do it anymore. I was a preschool teacher in a wonderful, wonderful preschool program. It was attached to the school system in which I grew up. So like very, a lot of good connections there. And every year we had a little fire safety. We would take a field trip and we would go to the fire station, which was just a few blocks away. So much fun.
Hmm.
And one year I got to dress up in like the firefighters put me in all of their stuff.
Uh-huh.
And the point was we wanted the children to see it's still Miss, at the time it was Miss Locke. It's still Miss Locke in there, right? Like I can, even though I've got the and I sound
Yeah,
scary and everything like
yeah.
that, it's still me. And so the idea being that like we could say to the kids then, it's because kids might be afraid that firefighter isn't a safe person, or is a bad person or something like that. So we wanted them to see someone that they knew and loved in all this stuff. And just the other things that we can do to help especially young children feel safe, I think. And I mean, we're talking here about like what can parents do. Probably not every parent has access to all the firefighter stuff, but
Right.
maybe to even have that conversation. Or have you got thoughts on that? Like what do we do sort of just past we're all aware of how the smoke detector sounds,
Mhm.
but if there's a fire and there are firefighters around it, any thoughts on how we can prepare our little kids for that?
Well, I think fortunately, we have like Paw Patrol right now for the little kids, and we can say that, the firefighter dog in Paw Patrol is named Marshall. And so, everybody knows Marshall has a positive association with Marshall being this fire dog. Well, we can say that Marshall, in real life, there are real firefighters who are nearby who are going to come into the house and they're going to have all this special gear on, kind of like you see Marshall have on, because there's a big push in firefighting that kids will hide because they're scared and they don't know what's going on. And firefighters, as you alluded to earlier, do look scary and all that stuff, especially with all the smoke and it's dark and everything. So I really think with the little kids, just say that these guys are fireproof and they're here to save you. Um,
Mm.
so just let them know that they are the ultimate authority in that situation and that they're somebody to trust. And I think that will go a long way with the little ones.
Yeah, I love the idea of fireproof. I mean, like
Hmm.
you need to go to this person because they can protect you from a fire. They're fireproof. It's like a
Right.
superpower.
Hmm.
What kinds of questions are you getting from people right now? Just again, in the midst of this
Sure.
coronavirus kind of COVID-19 outbreak.
There's a lot of people who are asking, really, how worried should I be? And, I'm not a medical professional. So, I kind of take it to the point of, I will tell you, my personal feelings are, society has changed. So whenever there's a big change or shift in society, it's going to affect every part of your life. Like when you throw a rock into a pond, you see all those ripples. Those ripples are going to go places that you didn't really think they were going to go. And I think one of those areas is home security. And I think home security is now more important than it ever has been before, especially 3 weeks ago. It's more important than it was 3 weeks ago. Because I think there's going to come a time where kids are going to get bored and they're going to start doing just mischievous stuff, in the neighborhood because they don't know what else is going on. I have a solution for that we can talk about later.
Cool.
And then there's going to be people who they alter their minds somehow, whether by alcohol or by recreational drugs, and they're going to, commit dumb crimes. And then there's just going to be people who are they're maxed out. They can't do anything else, and they don't have enough food or they don't have enough money, so they're going to try to find that stuff wherever they can, and that may be your house. So I'm telling people we're probably going to see locally a small uptick in property crime. And so that is not something that you should take and apply it to every single community in the country. But I think it's just something that as a parent, we need to think about. Okay, we need to keep our eye on people and how things are developing and make sure that, if you come across an entire case of toilet paper, don't post that on social media because people may show up at your front door, your friends or people who are not your friends. So there's a lot of discernment and caution that's needed right now to make sure that we are protecting our family from what's going to happen because there's a lack of resources.
And so this really, for me, harkens right back to what we spoke about at the beginning, which is like, if we say these things out loud, it's not necessarily going to happen. And,
Right.
being prepared for them isn't the same as the sort of magical thinking of like, okay, now there are marauders in our neighborhood or something like that.
Right.
And that, to me, that really hits home for me as a thing that I've been worried about. And there's actually two kind of questions I have about this. The first one is, how can we protect our home, protect ourselves? But the second one has more to do with how can we, as a community or as part of the community, prevent that kind of thing from happening in the first place. So I don't know which way you want to go first, but I'm really looking to you for the answers to both
Sure.
of those questions, Andy Murphy.
Okay. Well, first, let me talk about the solution that I had with the teenagers, because I think that's probably what we're going to see first. We're going to get a bunch of, kids who are just tired of being in the house, or they've watched all of Netflix or whatever it is, and so they're just now getting bored. So I went to the mailbox the other day, and there was a printed out piece of paper in it, and it was from a college student who was, of course, home because college is shut down right now.
Yep.
And he was offering lawn care services for just the neighborhood. And I thought that's a fantastic idea for him to make money, and two, for somebody to occupy their time. Maybe you can use that kind of thing if you've got a kid who's old enough and a lawnmower. Hey, push it across the street over here. Maybe there's a person who's more vulnerable to the virus right now. So maybe you can just go do that as a free service for somebody. Give your kids the satisfaction of helping somebody else, or, if they're getting paid for it, to go out and start earning their own money, to maybe start a business. Who knows, this might start a lifelong passion. So I think that's the first way we can help our communities, is by helping our kids to be able to cope with what's going on, so that these like small vandalism crimes and things like that don't have to happen.
And you're really talking about engaging them on a like helping them be motivated to do something positive rather than sort of be bored and frustrated and feeling like there's nobody in authority who's going to listen to that. Because I think part of that is there can sometimes be a little bit of a barrier between, I have teens, so I know this firsthand, but
I'm sure
but even with little kids, if our kids feel like we're approachable and we are, I think it's just, if I can take this to a sort of a developmental level for a second. Anytime that if our child comes up to us and says, I'm bored, and we sort of come up with all the reasons why they shouldn't be bored, and we tell them, you shouldn't feel that way, and go find something to do. I mean, and me too.
Yeah,
I never ever want to say like, I've done all the things I've said that you shouldn't do on the show. Totally, every one of them. with the exception of physical. We never ever use corporal punishment. And but
Right.
anyway,
Right.
I've shouted, I've done all those other things. So but instead, if we can say to our kids, like, well, tell me what's going on, and let's talk about this. And we're showing empathy, and our child feels understood, and then they can say, I just don't know what to do because I'm so bored. And now we can say, like, well, so and so across the street might need a little bit of help. Maybe they'd be willing to kick in, a little bit of money if you wanted to mow their lawn or something like that. And so I think that really dovetails with being a helpful person, but also now, and then there are the connections of doing that, of like a kid gaining the confidence to go up to somebody and say, hey, I'm here, can I help? Or
Right. Yeah. I didn't think about the whole confidence aspect of it. Yeah. Putting yourself out there, want to see if somebody can hire you. That is a pretty big step. That's something I hadn't thought about.
yeah. And I think a lot about this, and I've seen it in my own life, and I try to help parents understand on my show. Kids need mentors, and like anybody who has raised children already and is in that grandparental age, or even people like me with teens, we can see, and maybe you too, Andy, like, when you are in the presence of someone who's going to be exciting and motivating and fun for your child. And it is
Mhm.
so much fun to see that spark of like, oh, here's someone who's paying attention to me. They don't think of me as this kind of obnoxious teenager, but instead they're someone who's inspiring and exciting.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that anytime we can help a child feel that kind of connection, I think that's really, really wonderful. So yeah, that I feel like our two areas of expertise have kind of combined there.
Yeah, that
Which
is
is really,
good.
really
That's
neat.
great.
Yeah, and then the other aspect of that is, how can we protect against, are there any sort of smart or basic things that we can do to kind of protect against a teenager who didn't have that positive experience and is now wandering the neighborhood looking for something to vandalize?
Sure. Yeah. What we can, well, we can't pull our mailbox up and take it in the house, and because so that's something that we can't necessarily control. I've been on a lot of walks with my son around our neighborhood, and one of the things that I see all the time is homes just they leave their garage doors open all
Mhm.
the time. And in the garage, there are grills, there are bikes, there are sports equipment, there are power tools. All of those things can be pawned really easily, or
Mhm.
they can just be taken. And they're so common, it'd be very hard to prove that it's yours to get it back.
Mhm.
So the first thing we need to do is not tempt somebody to steal from us. And that is a form of deterrence. And I think that when it comes to home security and protecting your family, deterring is the most underrated aspect to all of it. Because if we can keep somebody from ever selecting our home or our kids for any sort of crime, then we've won the fight before it even started.
Mm.
So, I have this great visual of this teenager with the spray paint, going down the street. What is he looking to do? Close that garage door, bring in all of your stuff. I know your kids leave, the basketball is outside, and there's
Yeah.
like all sorts of stuff. Have them bring it in at the end of the day. Help them teach, learn a little responsibility for taking care of their stuff. But
Mhm.
just make sure that your house doesn't look like an easy target for anybody, because it would be real easy to walk into a garage and take something. If you keep that door down, that sort of easy crime is not going to be present on your property.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important, and it's like something that I think a lot of people just don't think about. It's super basic. You talk about locking doors as well. I mean, car doors, don't, if you leave your car in the driveway with all the windows down and the keys in the ignition, that's a pretty simple target.
Right. Yeah. You've made a target rich environment for whoever this is that's come up on your property. Yeah. There's actually like more car break-ins happening now because people are parking their cars on the streets because they're home more. The
Mm.
cars aren't moving. So people have more time to observe those patterns of life. And so when they can walk by on the street and look down in your car and see, is there a laptop case down in here? Do they have a bunch of money in the coin tray? Do they look like they're storing tools or a firearm in this car? They have plenty of time to sit there and look, and it's not hard to break into a car. It's really not. You can find a rock, smash a window, grab the stuff out of it, and go. Unless you have like a decent value car, it's probably not going to get, stolen, driven off in and taken to a chop shop. You're just going to have a bunch of broken glass and all your stuff inside is going to be
Mm.
gone.
Hmm.
So for that kind of stuff, make sure that if you can park under a street light, park under a street light. If you can park in your driveway, while it may be inconvenient to park in a driveway and have to shuffle cars around, I did that for a bunch of years when I started driving when I was living with my parents, and it's kind of hard to play that kind of game. But it's better to move your car closer to your house because the further it is from the street, the more the more guts it takes for the criminal to
Yeah.
walk onto your property
The
and get
more
it.
of a deterrent it is, just as you say.
Exactly. Exactly. And if you do have a car that you park in a driveway, you might have an extra garage door clicker, is what I call them. That's the technical term, garage door clicker. And if you leave that in there and somebody breaks into your car, well, now they can open up the biggest door to your home.
Yeah.
And so then they can open up, get into the garage. Do you lock the door between the garage and the rest of the house? If you don't, somebody could just break your car window, open the garage door, walk in your house. So there's a lot of things to think about when it comes to how you want to take care of your car and make sure it's okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's really important. You had referenced something earlier that I kind of wanted to come back to, which is people posting in social media. And the example that you wrote something like this in your book. This is in my notes, but you basically said, people give potential thieves a good idea of their movements with things like, oh, my kid has soccer every Thursday for the next 2 months. Guess where I'll be at 6 p.m.
Hmm.
And it's you've just told the world I'm not going to be home at 6
Right.
p.m. for the next 8 Thursdays or whatever. And I feel like things like that um, we can so easily fall into. And I'm wondering if you have thoughts on for the adults, for the grown-ups, kind of the social media stuff, and then for children, like thoughts on
Sure. Yeah.
things to be deterring against in social media for children as well.
Sure. We'll talk about property first.
Okay.
If you get something that's brand new, like you get a new big screen TV, I would really suggest that you don't put it on Facebook. Let's question why you want to put it on Facebook anyway. Are you just showing off for the sake of showing off, saying, "Hey, look at me, look at my new prized possession, look at all the prestige this thing gives me,"
Hmm.
or are you really showing it off because I worked really hard on getting this sucker straight and it's straight now? So when we post our possessions online, we think that only our friends are going to see it, and we know our friends. Our friends wouldn't steal from us. If our friends needed something, we would give them something. But some people's other Facebook pages are not as secure as yours, and they get hacked, or somebody else has access to that individual's phone. Like, now a lot of people are taking folks into their home, family members that they normally wouldn't have. Somebody who, your neighbor who you've known for a long time is now has somebody in their home who just, got out of prison 3 months ago. They're down to their luck, so they're staying there. Generally a good person, but they pick up your neighbor's phone, they start looking through it, and they say, "Hey, man, I can get a lot of money for that TV. And he just lives right over here. That's real easy. I can get to that."
Yeah.
So try not to advertise what's in your home. Just try to leave that a mystery, because when people can target and they know what's in your house, they can make a plan to get it.
Yeah.
The more information you give somebody on making a plan to get into your home, the worse things are going to be. For children, this one bothers me. I'll jump right to this. There are so many parents who post pictures of their kids in the bathtub without
Mm.
clothes on. I had a friend of mine post a picture of her daughter using the potty for the first time without any clothes on,
Mm.
and
Mm.
that one really, really bothered me. It bothers me because I know the terrible people that are out there and what they will use a picture like that for. You don't want pictures of your kids ending up being entertainment for the worst kind of human beings that there are.
Yeah.
So stop taking those pictures. If they're up, take
Yeah.
them down. Nobody's going to care if you delete them. You don't want to make your kid a target for any sort of person like that. I'm doing some reading and I'm doing some research on the mindset of predators. I'm reading the book Predators by Anna Salter, and it is a phenomenal book, but I'm having to take my time reading through it because it is very intense. It's a fantastic book, but it's very intense. So you have to like take a break in between reading it. And
Mm.
the people who want to hurt your kid the most are going to be the friendliest, most helpful people in your life. Um, they don't all have scars on their faces and eye patches and look like pirates. That's not the situation.
Right.
So
They just look like normal people.
they look like normal people.
Yeah.
So, and you have normal people all over your Facebook. You have all these normal looking friends. Let's minimize the opportunity for somebody to target your kid for, unspeakable reasons. And plus, it's embarrassing to your kids. I think about my friend's daughter. That picture is going to exist on some server somewhere forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not going to go away. I make the point, I think in a podcast and also in a blog that, for you and me, there are embarrassing pictures of us, but they're in a photo book under the coffee table in our parents' house where nobody else can get to it. It's not on Facebook where it can be downloaded,
Yeah.
so that's something that we have to consider. You don't want to make your kid, the target of somebody, but you also want to protect their privacy as well and
Yeah.
make sure that they have the opportunity to grow up in being anonymous, kind of like we did,
Yeah.
when
We
we
want to give
grew
them
up.
that.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly. I'm actually going to link to this podcast episode in the show notes, although I don't have the number. But
I'll find it for you.
the first episode that I heard of yours was where you had mentioned that, because you have your son loves selfies. He's little. He loves to take selfies, and he asked for a selfie in the bathtub. And you were like, okay, this is a really good opportunity to talk about why we can't do selfies, with no clothes on. And I'm the other reason I want everybody to go and listen to it is because it was a really good it was a really succinct way of being sensitive to this without making your child feel like they're in trouble or anything like that. I mean, there's a whole other part of this, right, that we kind of haven't talked about, which is kids do engage in magical thinking and could think, and also they're very egocentric. So
Mhm.
children are not good at seeing from other perspectives. So if something happens, they will likely interpret it as something that they did or a mistake that they made that has caused goodness knows what. They take things very personally, and so and that fits into this conversation, because if there's a burglary or if there's something like that, and your child inadvertently had anything to do with that, I mean, they'll feel terrible. So
Mhm.
let's protect them by not even making it a thing, like, just not posting pictures of them, but also not posting about their new, I don't know, new eminently stealable little Jeep that they can ride around in or something, like,
Right,
right? Like,
right.
um, trying to make everybody feel secure, um, without and positive, I guess I'll say.
Mhm.
And that actually brings me to a question that we got from a member of our Facebook, the We Turned Out Okay Facebook group. I am for every one of these, by the way, that I am doing, for every interview I try to do, I try to let everybody in the We Turned Out Okay sort of email news group, which you can sign up for by going to weturnedoutokay.com/weekly. And also in the We Turned Out Okay Facebook group, I try to give people opportunities to be able to ask questions. And so Jennifer's question, hello, Jennifer, is this: what are some phrases that help kids balance honesty with discretion? And I feel like that's why it just came into my mind, because, there's some developmental thinking here that we need to get into, right? And she continues, like, don't be telling anyone where you found that money stash, and nobody needs to know the specifics of our emergency plans, but don't think that I'm asking you to lie. That's not it. And she writes, do you know what I mean?
That is a very good question. Was it Jennifer who asked that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer. That is a really good question. You know, I have had. I'll tell you a story, and I'll come back to Jennifer's question here. I've had times where, and I'm sure you've done this sort of stuff too. You have to explain to your kid that there's such things as good secrets, and then there are bad secrets. Good secrets are, knowing what you got mommy for her birthday, but you don't tell her because you ruin the surprise. Bad secrets are things that make you feel bad and they make you feel ashamed. And when you have this stuff like, don't tell people our emergency plans. Don't tell people where, we might have a stockpile of emergency money or emergency toilet paper
Mm-hmm.
in this particular case. You can just say that that's like our private business. Not everybody needs to know what's going on. It's not a secret, but that's just not something that we need to tell other people. So I think if you just say that that's a private matter, or that is something that is just for our family, then that's what needs to happen. Not everybody needs to know everything that happens in our house. Not everybody needs to know every detail of what's going on with their family. So I think if you just kind of couch it as, it's just family, private matters, then
Mm-hmm.
that would probably be something that a kid would understand, I
Yeah,
would think.
yeah. And then, so what if a child were to come back to you? Well, I guess would you suggest? I think sometimes we can telescope out what our kids might be thinking about that, and uh, I'm wondering if it seems like a good idea to you to sort of wait for their quiz. So you say, "Oh, you know what? We're not talking about this because it's family business, and we're keeping it within our family. It's private." Um, would it be your idea then that to sort of wait and see what questions kids might have, or is there something else that you'd think people would want to say about that, or how would you approach that?
Right. I would say, hey, that's family private business, and then see what they say. If they
Mm,
come back with any questions immediately, that's fine. But also, as parents, we know when our kids still have questions. We can see it on their faces, and then say, hey, does everything I say just make sense here? We don't want to let people know what our emergency plans are. And if you feel like your kid is mature enough, you can say, because we don't want the bad guys knowing what we're going to do. You know, we
yes.
don't want other people to be able to know what we're going to do. Those are our secret plans to keep us safe. That might work as well.
Yeah, yeah, I love that, especially if you've got a child. I love the idea too of looking at their faces and seeing, how is this hitting them, and being able to say, does that make sense?
hmm
So
My
important.
son is one of those people. I never have to worry about what he's thinking because it's on his face.
Yeah.
It's here now. I don't know if it'll be here when he's 17, but it's here now, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, that's really, really good. Through our conversation, we're kind of wrapping up. But I have thought two or three times about a particular series of books, which you probably, I mean, not, I don't know how many people have heard of these books or whatever, but there's an author named Donald Westlake who wrote a whole series of books about a thief named John Dortmunder. Have you ever heard of John
That
Dortmunder?
sounds familiar.
They
I
are
haven't read it, but it's familiar.
well, so here's, I mean, they're not for children. These are just
hmm
adult books. They are hilarious. They're very funny. They're really kind of laugh out loud funny. And I almost never say that about books because I've read so many books that are supposedly laugh out loud funny. But anyway, these are about a crew of basically lovable thieves, that so you're hearing and seeing things from their perspective, particularly John Dortmunder's perspective. He's usually the mastermind behind it all. And the thing that's so cool about these books is, you are getting an understanding of how thievery works and like why. So there's this one, for example, where and the they're books that have a really great sort of poetic justice, sense of poetic justice. So I mean, they're supposedly the bad guys, right? But if there's a person, for example, who has contracted with them to steal a bunch of stuff, and that person turns out to be a truly bad guy, well, they're going to get it in these books. Like something funny, but also not too great for them is going to happen. And there's this one book where they want to rob a very wealthy sort of person who has like a home, a compound in Vermont where they're keeping all of this, I believe, stolen art. And their point is, well, we want to get the stolen art so that we can fence it, we can sell it, right? But the ways that they go about it the way that they go about, for example, getting these people to shut off their security system is so, it just gets so into this mindset. Basically what they do is they go and set off the security system like a bunch of times and then pose as employees of the security system, say, oh, sorry, we'll figure it out tomorrow night. And then tomorrow night it happens again. And finally these people are like, oh, forget it. And they completely ignore what's happening in this place. So the reason I'm thinking about it now, first of all, I think everybody should read some of these books because they help you to see from a criminal's mindset, but like,
Yes.
um but in a way that feels approachable and funny, and has always helped me as I think about it now. Like, think like what's happening in my view, what's happening in my home, like what can I do to sort of guard against anybody who wants to, who might want to be a thief or whatever.
Right.
But then the other reason it comes up for me is, oh, I've lost my train of thought. There was another reason, but it's gone.
Well, I think you've actually touched on something very important, and you said it. You get to see, in the book, you get to see things from the point of view of the thief, and that is something I bring up briefly in the book. And that the technical term for that is called the adversarial mindset. And the
Okay.
adversarial mindset is thinking like a bad guy, and that is something that I encourage you to do. Everybody tonight, you can go stand on your front lawn or face your apartment complex, wherever you live. And I want you to stand there and think, how would I break into my house? What is it that I would do? You can put yourself in the mindset of the teenager who has the spray paint. Okay, what would I tag if I were out here? Well, maybe I'm a junkie and I'm looking for something that I can, pawn real quick. Is there stuff laying around outside that I can get to? If I'm a dedicated attacker and I know that these people have money that I need, how am I going to break in their house? Am I coming in through the front door? Am I coming in through the window? Am I going around the back? Is it dark in my neighborhood? Is it dark in my yard? How do I add light to it? So when you see things through the eyes of a criminal, and this does not make you a criminal. We'll go all the way back to the
Yep.
beginning. You're thinking
Yep.
about it doesn't make you a criminal.
Yeah.
You reverse engineer what you find, and you add light where it's dark, and you make sure your front door is locked, and you do all of those things to minimize the opportunity of somebody for real standing in front of your house saying, is this going to be my target tonight, or am I going to go on somewhere else?
I love that. So important. Yeah, yes, everybody, you need to do that today. Listen to this conversation and then go do that. Um, I think that's such a good idea, and it's such a springboard into a really great book. Quick read. It's called The Secure Dad. Andy, I just want to say thank you so much for writing it, and for all the work that you're doing to help keep families safe.
I very much appreciate that. That's why I do this. I want to make sure that nobody has to be worried about if they're going to be safe or not. They can have a plan to try to do everything they can to deter crime from happening to them in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not. It's there's a martial art called Aikido, which
Hmm.
we've got several family members who sort of do it, almost in fanatic is the wrong word. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. So I don't mean that in a bad way, but they've
Right.
like, we have family members who have relocated to different parts of the country because that's where the, a dojo that they wanted to be involved with was, or whatever. And it's neat because it's not about, there are a couple of different, the way it was described to me anyway, when my son wanted to choose some kind of martial art, was there are some that are kind of like, I think of them as kill the kid with the football ones, where like you're being taught how to attack, you're being taught how to do all these things. And the point of Aikido is you're being taught how to deter.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's all about taking somebody else's energy and making them go away from you. It's really, really fascinating. And these relatives that I'm thinking of have really adopted that as their mindset, and it makes them very calm, peaceful people who know how to handle something when it's, who know how to handle a bad person, but who make it their sort of life's energy to minimize those kinds of conflicts and really just deter them. I mean, there's no other word for it. And this, what you're doing here, I feel like, is helping people do that, even if they're not Aikido masters.
Right.
Very,
Yeah.
very cool. And just as we're wrapping up, you've given us a really cool kind of bonus, some bonus content for people who would go to, and I'll link to this in the show notes, thesecuredad.com/OkayCon.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit? What's
Sure.
over there?
What you're going to find there is an 8-page guide that will help you make secure changes to your house that you can do today. A lot of these things you don't have to worry about running to the store or ordering from Amazon. You can do these things now. And one of the simple ones is, and I kind of touched on this earlier, as I'm going to encourage you to keep your front porch light on. Believe it or not, the most common way that anybody breaks into any home in the United States is through the front door.
Wow.
Now that doesn't sound like that doesn't sound like it makes any sort of sense, but they do, because a lot of people either don't lock their doors or they kick through them. So if you turn your porch light on, you take away the darkness that surrounds your house. And if somebody appears on your front porch under that light, they're going to be seen by everybody. And bad guys don't want to be seen. They want to get in quietly, get what they can, and leave quickly. So by adding light to your front door, the place where a lot of crime starts, you're going to deter them from ever getting on your front porch in the first place. And they're going to say, nope, light's on there. I'm not going there. That house over there is dark. I'm going to go check it out. And so
Yeah.
it's going to be stuff like that that you can do right now, today, to start making your home safer.
I love it. OkayCon. Well, thesecuredad.com/OkayCon. And the other thing that I was just thinking of too is the next day or before this happens, hopefully you could go to your neighbors, right? And you could say, hey, just turn your porch light on. That way,
Right.
you know, everybody around us is secure and we're sort of spreading security, which is good.
Absolutely. I like it.
So cool. All right. Andy Murphy, it has been such a pleasure to have you on the show. I'm so grateful to you for the work that you do, for being here with us. Really, really much appreciated.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate it. And I appreciate what you're doing too. This whole idea of having OkayCon and having it be online is just phenomenal. Honestly, I wish I had thought of it.
Oh, well, good. I appreciate that. What a compliment. Thank you. I like to end every show by saying, first of all, thank you so much for watching, for listening. It really means a lot to have you here with Andy and me today or tonight, whenever you happen to be watching or listening. And I always like to say a huge thank you to our producer, the man who I think when the children were born, when we had our first child, he immediately thought to himself, okay, I need an adversarial mindset. Like, what are the things that can, you know, I need to think about how to protect my family. And I'm so grateful to him for that. He is the 22-time winner of the Husband of the Year Award. He is our producer. He is the voice that we hear at the top of every podcast episode. His name is Benjamin Kolp. And so thank you so much, Ben, for everything that you do for us. And finally, thanks again so much to you for listening. And we will see you next time.